Hello. This video is going to be about weed addiction. So, after 5+ years, I have finally conquered and quit my weed addiction. And it turns out it's not actually as hard or painful as our brain makes it out to be. And with that being said, you can't really trust your brain anymore. It's gotten us to this point because this is all it knows. And it's gotten us to this point because we keep on listening to it. So, I'll start you off with a little story. Growing up, I grew up around highly narcissistic people. Very self-centered individuals. I would say like 95% of the time, unless I was literally having a mental breakdown, I never really got any sort of emotional support because it just got dismissed. It just simply wasn't important. And perhaps this is a reflection of the people around me more so than it is myself. But as a result, I learned how to cope with these diluted ass negative coping strategies. Be it weed, be it video games, be it consuming just absolute dog shit content on the internet. Basically, the first sense of addiction I have encountered was I would literally play video games for 12 hours a day. Whether it was World of Warcraft, playing Arena, whether it was League of Legends, trying to grind rank and just improve. Video games taught me how to improve. My brother also started smoking weed at a very early age, maybe 14, so I kind of learned this coping strategy from him because I saw him doing it all the time and I thought it was cool. Eventually, in college, he would help me acquire weed through one of his plugs. My initial experience, I didn't even know how to roll, so it went pretty fucking terribly. The first time I tried to consume weed, I didn't really feel anything. I was like, this is pretty fucking trash. This is stupid. So I basically just wasted it. And I can even remember the first strain I ever tried. It was like White Widow or something stupid. Like $40 an eighth or something. Just pure degeneracy. So fast forward to my junior year in college. I was going super ham up to this point. My first 2 years went quite smoothly, went pretty effectively. I got through my electives, I got through the initial courses for my major, and things were going great. I got a 4.0 like 2 semesters in a row. And then, one of the best professors who ran the entire computer science department ended up retiring. And in place, they hired this Korean guy who couldn't speak any English, and in that same year, I had this professor named Dr. Gupta. He taught databases and all these higher level classes. He was like 75 years old, and needless to say, learning from these types of people who, one, couldn't speak English or were so old that they literally forget what they say and then just revert like some Joe Biden ass shit. Learning from these people was fucking terrible. It was not fun. So, with the new Korean professor, I couldn't understand or retain any of what was happening in those classes. And with Gupta, man was a fucking loose cannon. He would change his mind every few seconds. He would say something the day previously, and then the next day, he would just say we are completely wrong. And then we'd show him the notes from the day previously of what he told us, and he would just call us stupid. It was wild. Needless to say, at this point in college, my grades started to slip because the experience was just getting really fucking bad. So I started coping with a new strategy. Instead of playing things like Overwatch all day, playing video games all day, I tried smoking weed for the first time. And around this same time in my junior year, all my classes, I was in computer science, so all of my classes were at like 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Just the worst schedule you could possibly have. Whereas the initial first 2 years, I started every day around 8 a.m. and finished around 11 a.m. And then I would have the entire day to do whatever the fuck I wanted. Whether it be socialize, whether it be literally just do healthy stuff. So this year, I was sleeping all day and staying up all night. I would literally grind League of Legends until the early morning, and then I would wake up like 10 minutes before my class and just fucking power walk until my calves were literally burning. Just fucking zoom to class. So this is around the time that I started to go through a serious depressive episode. And if you can recognize any of this context: shitty sleep schedule, grade slipping, heavier reliance on these dopaminergic activities, you can kind of see where I'm getting at. I was kind of snowballing and building this up, whether I knew it or not. So, as stated previously, my first experience with weed was fucking trash. I had no idea what I was doing. And then one day, one of my greatest friends that I've ever met in this fucking world in college, Haley, brought me like 10 grams of weed that her father grew in their backyard. And it wasn't like designer stuff, but it got the job done, that's for sure. So I ended up going back home that weekend and rolling up a joint properly and smoking the whole thing by myself. And I remember I was on my front porch and walking around my block. Once I started to take hits of that weed, my vision became super focused. And for the first time in my life, I was able to tunnel vision on something. And that felt really, really good. And as I grew to really enjoy that feeling, it would allow me to get into the state where none of the noise around me really mattered anymore. None of the bullshit, none of the intrusive thoughts. I would just have a period where I was focused and I felt really good and I can do the work that I was supposed to. Whether this was because the weed was giving me dopamine so I could be motivated and focused, I don't know. But everything became more enjoyable. Literally, the street lights looked brighter and more colorful. Listening to music was fucking awesome. Having conversations with people while high became incredible. And this is coming from someone who never really tried to socialize with people. I just kind of kept to myself. And most of all, I could sit and play video games just completely immersed, and that was like the best feeling in the world. So fast forward to my senior year. It got to the point where I was no longer just smoking on weekends. I was smoking in my dorm room so I can get work done because, truthfully, I was getting really, really tired of the school grind. I was getting burned out. Low-key, if it wasn't for weed, I don't know if I would have made it through school sane. I say that I probably could have, but it helped me get through that period in my life a lot. At the same point, I started to experience health issues, which I'll get into more. So that also helped me a lot. It took my mind off of the incredible levels of pain I was experiencing. It got to the point where I was in my dorm room and I was basically gambling on whether the RAs would knock on the door one day and catch me smoking. And I've only had one incredibly close encounter, but just because of sheer luck, I literally got lucked out. I could have literally lost where I was living at the time. I would have been screwed. It would not have ended well. But I was doing this stuff anyways because I just didn't care. So one night, I waited out the annoying ass RAs that go around checking on people before smoking. And luckily, they knocked I really wanted to smoke, but I waited, they knocked, and then I knew that was my cue. I was good to go. But when I think back to how bad that situation could have been, it's hard to comprehend the gravity of that. So there was a huge part of me that was just like, fuck it, we should do it. But something in my brain told me to just wait a little longer until everyone goes to sleep like a normal human. I was living fucking stupidly. And if you play stupid games, well, you're going to win stupid fucking prizes. And had I been caught, I would have been kicked out of my living space, and it would have been a huge fucking deal for me moving forward. I don't know how the schooling situation would have went, but I would have been forced to commute every single day over an hour, and the commute wasn't really realistic. This was from Queens to Long Island. That's a shit-ass commute just to go to school for 3 hours. And also, my family just wouldn't let me hear the end of it if they found out. Like, that would have been really fucking bad. So after college, I only got more and more into it. I was trying out new strains. I found this new plug. He would literally have like 10 different of the craziest strains. I would go crazy on ounces with a ton of variety just to experience all these different types of smells and flavors. And while it was a really, really fun hobby that I honestly kind of still enjoy, Obviously, it's quite destructive because at the end of the day, you're literally putting toxic shit into your lungs. And not only that, you're okay with sitting in your own shit when you're high, like a fucking pig in its own pen. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you get high, you're pretty okay with things going poorly. It kind of distracts you from all the negative shit that's going on in your life. And for a short period, you feel okay. Why? Getting high just makes you feel like everything is okay, even when it's not. Which was exactly my problem. I wouldn't take action on the things that I needed to improve upon. I would just smoke weed and play video games in order to escape the dog shit reality of my life. And not to mention, I had some serious health issues with my gallbladder that my mom just refused to go with me to the doctor for almost an entire year. So I was doing really bad. And I don't really want to bring any justification to it. I was 20 years old. I was stupid. I thought I could rely on my parents to help me in these types of situations. That was a mistake. I get it. I learned from that experience. I take accountability. Another bullshit excuse I use to continue my addiction is me and my brother have never really gotten along on anything. Because, quite honestly, there's no nice way of saying this, but the dude is a piece of shit. He can't really control his emotions, like highly narcissistic tendencies, just hammering in all of his own projected insecurities into me. It's just not a fun person to be around. Unfortunately, smoking weed together was literally the only activity that we have ever done in order to bond and spend time with each other. So as a result, I kind of looked at those experiences as a net positive, even though they may not have been. So over the years, I started to take notice on the effects that things like weed, porn, video games would have on myself. It was destroying my dopamine and my reward systems internally. Over time, I just got less and less enjoyment from things. My problems would catch up to me more and more, and all I'd be left with is the shame of my destructive actions. But I still wasn't ready to face the withdrawals that come with weed. And truthfully, these withdrawals ain't shit. When you hear the stories of alcohol, like people literally having the capability of dying because they don't consume alcohol, weed withdrawals ain't shit. We are playing it up so hard in our brains as this impossible task. Imagine quitting fucking alcohol, man. Weed withdrawals are quite literally like 2 to 3 days of increased anxiety and sweats. That's it. Maybe you'll have some crazy ass dreams. That's literally it. Eventually, I started to try to dig myself out of the hole that I created. So I started going to the gym in order to rebuild my health from like actual zero. Like I was not in a good place physically. As a result of trying to take better care of my health, I started to question if weed really was a good thing for me. I recognized that weed has a massive unconscious effect on your sleep, which would in turn diminish gains, and I sure as hell don't want to be leaving gains on the table. So I didn't quit for a while, like fucking years. But slowly over time, I started trying more and more to quit cold turkey, and after dozens of failed attempts, I started to think of a new strategy. I compared the weed addiction to alcohol addiction, and how do these people cut down on alcohol? Well, they wean off. They don't just go completely cold turkey because they can actually die from it. So I figured it would be easier to slowly decrease consumption over time, and I found that to work fucking wonders. So instead of cutting it out completely, perhaps I can kind of just do less and less, and maybe not even smoke, maybe just take edibles to fulfill that craving. And indeed, the edibles would fulfill that craving, and I wouldn't have to smoke, meaning that this was a huge net positive compared to my previously failed attempts. I was finally starting to see progress, and I wasn't even smoking. I was consuming this stuff in a way healthier way. So I just felt so much better about myself. And I actually learned that I can do this. So fast forward to about 4 months ago, I had my last wisdom tooth removed. And I remember I was such a fucking degenerate back in the day. When I got my third to last wisdom tooth removed, I literally smoked. Even though I may have waited a day or two, a few days, I literally smoked when the doctor told me like, don't do this shit because I was just that addicted. So recently, since this last dental appointment, whatever you want to call it, I was finally able to convince myself that not being a degenerate addict was actually way more important than smoking and causing my gums to bleed and be in pain and this dry socket shit. So I successfully stopped consuming weed for the first time ever for over a week. And this experience taught me that it's not as bad as my brain is making it out to be. Even more so, learning about things like self-awareness and how my ego is trying to protect me from future failures with the same destructive habits I've had implemented for the longest time, because it doesn't really understand the severity of what you're doing. It doesn't understand the nuances. It just understands that this is a strategy to not feel like shit. That allowed me to see things for what they really are. And the problem with addiction is it clouds your judgment. It doesn't allow you to see things for what they are. Your brain simply understands it as a quick fix, and it doesn't think about the long-term consequences. And I'm not just talking about degradation of health. I'm talking like you sit inside and play video games and smoke weed all day, and that is time that you're spending not progressing in life. And after 5+ years of this, I realized my life wasn't going anywhere. I didn't work towards getting a job. I didn't work towards developing myself. I didn't work towards surrounding myself with people who are good influences. I would simply do the same thing over and over every single day until I genuinely just got sick of wasting my life. And the people I would surround myself with, the people I would play video games with, would literally judge me for wanting to change my ways. If anyone ever tells you, when you're trying to quit an addiction, oh, you can't be this rigid, only 1 hour of video games a day isn't so bad, those people are absolute fucking losers, and you need to cut those people out of your life ASAP. Those are not your friends. Those are your mutual addicts. Get away from those people as fast as possible. Because if you look at their life compared to where you are now after the addiction, they're doing the same exact shit. For years. They're doing the same shit you were doing when you viewed yourself as a complete and utter loser. And what a surprise, they haven't changed at all. They're still defending this shit. You tell them like you quit weed, they'll say like, "Oh, I don't know how I can do that. I don't know if I could do that." That's Fast forward to today. I've finally kicked the addiction, and I don't feel the need to give in to the cravings anymore because I value the benefits of being sober way more. I would rather get good sleep and function better than smoke. I would rather resist my impulses and build that part of my brain, that frontal lobe, that decision-making part of my brain, and have it grow larger so it could be stronger and better, than give in because I'm more likely. I'd rather do that than give in because as a result, I'm way more likely to do something of value with that time. Like make a video to help other human beings. That is purpose. Sitting in a fucking room that's dark, smoking weed by yourself, talking to your online friends, there's no fucking purpose in that. I would rather value my time than sit around being a potato, fucking couch locked, high as hell. Sure, it feels good in the moment, but that is a day that you are never getting back. And time doesn't give a shit about you or where you are in life. It's going to keep on going whether you decide to do the right things or not. So don't leave yourself behind because you have this impulse that the evil world around you has instilled in you. The people who gain from you smoking weed and making yourself more of a degenerate don't care that your life is stagnant. They just care that you keep coming back and giving them money. They don't care if your health is getting worse. Hell, they don't even care about the effects weed has on them. This can't be truth. Truth is God. And we all have two voices in our head. The impulsive, devilish voice that's pulling us towards negative things that are going to ruin our lives, which is represented in cartoons as like the devil whispering sweet nothings into your ear, and the voice of God, which is represented as the angel trying to talk you into staying pure and not listening to that voice. And as a result, no longer listening to that destructive voice in my head, I noticed my anxiety, which is one of the main reasons I was smoking weed, to emotionally regulate my anxiety. My anxiety has gone down so fucking drastically. So much so, each time I had an issue, I would turn to weed and it would calm me down for a short period. But once the high went away, all of that anxiety just came flooding back into my life. And I would feel it way more intensely than previously because I never addressed it. And now I noticed that I could literally have somebody be super fucking disrespectful, screaming in my face for an hour and a half, and I can still walk away and think clearly. I can still emotionally regulate effectively rather than just running from my problems. I noticed that my literal ability to breathe and slow down my heart rate and not give in to intrusive thoughts. I can't even describe how much progress I've made in that area of my life. My VO2 max, because of the exercise and just straying from negative habits, has also increased substantially. If you don't know what VO2 max is, it's basically how effectively your body can circulate oxygen to parts of your brain and body that actually need it, that need it most at a given time. And I literally feel like I can output more. I am 100 times more productive. I feel way healthier. My brain and body literally function way more optimally. My sleep is better. Running feels better. My lung capacity feels better. Quitting weed has opened up so much time in my schedule that for the first time ever, I can produce all day, and I can willingly say at the end of the day, once I've done a good bit of what I wanted to do, I don't feel like being productive right now. And I wouldn't feel insanely guilty because I'm just constantly putting myself behind, because instead of addressing my problems, I just cope. And I'll leave you guys with this. I'm not going to make this religious, but I feel like this is a good analogy. We're all sinners at times. We're all going to mess up at times. We're going to stumble. We're going to fail. We're going to do bad habits, especially when we get emotionally overwhelmed. But we must try our best to follow the path that God has laid out for us. We will fail at times, but if we live a life directed by the devil's influence, in this case the destructive habits, you bet your sweet ass you will be miserable as fuck. Unfortunately, in today's society, being a normal person is more rare than being a destructive human that keeps giving into these devilish influences around them. Be it drugs, be it alcohol, rumination, porn, indulgence, whatever your vice is, using people for your own gain, whatever it is. Society reinforces people being stupid and destructive. Why? Because we live in a consumer-based society. And as long as people are spending money, it's viewed as a good thing. As long as money's circulating, it's not a bad thing. Like, the world could be going completely to shit, but our economy's fine. So you know what? Like, living quality is up. That's the conclusion we come to. Even though we're facing more complex and more difficult and more painful problems than we've ever even been exposed to. It's sad because things like sleeping around with a ton of people is seen as cool. You're literally a cool person for fucking, I don't even know how to word this. Sleeping around with a ton of people is seen as cool, whereas deep connection is not. It's not even something most people even consider. Getting attention is seen as cool, whereas literally having one or two good friends is seen as a bad thing. Going out and partying is seen as cool, whereas grinding and improving yourself is literally seen as weird and not normal. Fuck the world for being set up this way. Think about it this way. Each time you buy another eighth and you smoke, the devil has you in his clutches. That is not you in control. That is literally the impulsive, devilish part of your brain in control. It's not really you living your life anymore. And each time you make a conscious decision to abstain from your negative habit, you're giving the universe, you're giving God, whatever you want to call it, the opportunity to show you the life that you were meant to live. You're giving yourself the opportunity to live up to your potential and be the human that you're meant to fucking be. Not just this fucking degenerate that has so little going for him because Instead of working on and addressing the problems that you have in life, you would rather sit at home and just indulge. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in today. Everything is based around indulging in negative things and consuming. There's so few people that are out there genuinely producing. And I'm not talking about having a job, right? Going to work. I'm talking like, are you literally making the world a worse or a better place given the fucking beautiful energy that God gave you? Whether that be in the form of people you meet because you're not at home smoking all day, whether that's in the form of a career that you feel is really satisfying and is actually changing the world in a positive way, or working on hard things that you're passionate about, like making videos to help people. Because the satisfaction you derive from these types of things, it is so deep and nothing can compare to it. Whereas the satisfaction you derive from consuming things like marijuana and alcohol, that's very diluted. That's a slow and steady path downward. And that's all I got for you. Thank you for listening.